My jewellery is technique-led, so I have an unusual technique in that I use stones as my hammers and anvils. I've been using the same couple of stones since 1999 as my hammers, and I have a favourite anvil. I'm well set up for anvils on the south coast, but my hammer stones came from a beach and I don't know where they came from. This one is the main stone. It just feels really great in the hand. It is flatter on the bottom now than it used to be, which is better for some tasks, not so good for others. This is luckily my backup hammer because about 3 years ago it came apart in my hands. The hammer stones I selected for their shape within the hand and their heft and their feel, but primarily for the texture. They have a very granular surface texture, and when they lose material, it is just like little grains of sand coming away, or sugar, grains of sugar actually, it's quite crystalline. I am using the stones themselves as tools rather than fashioning stone to become a tool. I'm often asked why I don't put my stones on handles, because if I had them fitted on handles, the handle would absorb a lot of the vibration that stresses me physically, but I wouldn't have that immediacy of actually contacting the metal through the stone directly with my hand. It's the directness of the technique that really works. I work primarily in fine silver, so it's pure silver. Sterling, which is the material that people know about, is 925 parts in 1,000. Fine silver, pure silver, is 999 parts in 1,000. And I use fine silver because it's softer and it takes the texture of my stones more easily. People then sometimes worry about the metal being too soft, but by the time I've finished hammering it, it is work hardened just like any other hammered metal. This is a piece of fine silver that is made specially for me in Birmingham because so few people use fine silver that I can't get it. It's not worth their while making it up unless it's made up in quantity. So I have it delivered to me soft annealed, which means that they bake it in an industrial oven so that I can just finger manipulate it. And then I hammer. I like to hammer long lengths, even though it's much more difficult, because then I cut down on my wastage. And I know silver is recyclable, but it's better to use the material that I've had specially made up for me rather than recycle bits. So, because my work has a granite-like surface texture, it reveals the true colours of gold in all its richness and varieties according to the alloy. And with silver, it really accentuates the lunar qualities of the white metal. The percussive nature of the technique gives a moon-like surface to anything I make, and with gold particularly, it's been noted that there's a kind of archaeological sensibility to my work. The only areas that I polish, and I do all that by hand with a technique called burnishing, are the edges. So all my edges gleam and glint, and they are a wonderful counterpoint to the granite surface textures of precious metals. Essentially, I am creating intimately landmarked surfaces because I am using a piece of the land in my hand and directly and percussively impacting another land-found material, i.e. metal, with that texture. So it's intimately landmarked is the crux of my signature treatment of metal. I think there are many reasons for wearing jewellery. Madeleine Albright is a case in point. She would wear her extensive contemporary brooch collection in order to convey messages. And there's a book about her and her jewellery wearing and the specific pieces that she would wear to communicate how she might feel about a certain situation that she was going into. Other people will wear jewellery to kind of armour themselves and protect themselves in some way. It might just be that they're going into a job that they don't like, so they put their clothes on and then they put their jewellery on So there's a barrier, there's a visual barrier between them and maybe a difficult situation. Other people will wear jewellery simply because they want to adorn themselves. I think that you can't be too precious about all of that. I mean, the ring I'm wearing here on this finger actually has the stones from two very ordinary 9-carat gold eternity rings. So I don't like to work with 9-carat gold. It's too brittle for my technique. So I was very ruthless. I removed these stones. I don't know whether they're glass or spinels. I doubt very much that they're diamonds. So it was the stones that were important to me. I've encased them in a ring, within a ring, under a piece of rock crystal that, or quartz that magnifies them, and they move around. And so the piece is called Double Eternity, because it's 2 eternity rings, one from each side of my family. And the movement reminds me of those games that we used to have when I was a kid, and they were always at my grandparents', where you have a little maze and you try and get all the steel balls into one area. Well, that's the kind of playful aspect that's wrapped up in this ring as well. And this piece, I took all the kind of old sentimental jewellery that I had that was either broken or too old-fashioned, or I didn't want to wear it anymore. And if it wasn't broken, I cut the rings and stretched them out, stoned everything with my stones to give it my texture, and made this brooch called These Foolish Things. These are garnets. It belonged briefly to my grandmother, but broke very soon after I got it. I asked my first boyfriend for a wishbone ring, and he bought me a half wishbone ring, so I bought myself a wishbone ring. This I swapped for a pencil skirt in the 80s. And that I bought, I don't know, when I was about 20. That I bought when I was about 14, and my friend said to me, "Where's the diamond?" And I said, "What diamond?" She said, "There are diamond jewellers. Everything they sell has got a diamond in it. And in the middle, smaller than a pinhead, is a diamond." Some years ago now, I inherited rings from both of my grandmothers. None of them were my style. Even if they had been, they would have been too small. And there were no serious rocks within them. But what really fascinated me were the memories that were contained. So I made these 2 brooches that I've named my grandmother's hands. The 22-carat gold ring in the middle is just tied on with silk in a colour that my grandmother used to really like to wear. So I associate her with that colour, and it's a colour that my mother happens to love as well. And then there are 2 tiny diamonds above that I've set very simply. So this other brooch is Irene Beatrice for my paternal grandmother. And I believe that this little engraved eternity ring, it's silver, and I believe it was her mother's. She always wore it, and it just has glass in it. But I decided to stitch it again with silk in a colour that she loved. She loved those blousy fuchsias that look like ballerinas, and she was a big fan of shocking pink, so hence the pink silk. These are her mother's engagement ring and her engagement ring, both very, very worn. The diamonds are absolutely tiny, set in platinum that's been repaired. But I realised that it was those settings that reminded me of my grandmother's hands. So that's why I've preserved the settings and I've reset them as precious elements in their own right. In here are tiny diamonds that I've magnified under a rock crystal. They do move about, but it's way too small for me to show you. They surrounded the tiny ruby that was my grandmother's ruby wedding ring. The setting was not to my taste. The ring didn't fit me, so I reused the 18-carat gold to set the ruby, and I've presented the diamonds in a playful way. So those are the pieces that really taught me about the importance of really approaching reusing sentimental jewellery in quite a slow way. This is a pendant called Gifted and Found. And I've here used the oval form. because I just felt it was a good form for a pendant for me. And this is a pearl I found about 40 years ago. On the birthday trip to Egypt, we camped out in the desert and I found this piece of fulgurite, which is what happens when lightning hits the sand. It forms quite long branching twig-like structures that are very brittle. So this is a tiny piece of fulgurite wrapped on with brightly coloured silk to echo a piece of antique coral that my husband gave me when I originally started making jewellery, so a very long time ago. The opal was in the clutches of a koala bear on a stick pin that my father gave me when I was 14. He travelled a lot internationally and it was one of the presents he brought back for me. So I prized it out of the clutches of the koala and represented it on recycled gold here. And the crystal, which I've tied on with 18-karat gold wire, is again found in the desert where we camped out under the stars on my 40th birthday trip to Egypt. I decided that I wanted to continue working in this way, but with pieces that people could actually purchase. So I've decided to work in themes. This is a sky gazer's brooch. It is a large piece. It has a double pin on the back. Again, I've riveted the elements to it. Oh, this is turquoise. Yeah. The marquise shape is oxidized to represent the night sky, and the opening of curtains to look at the stars, which are represented by diamonds. Lapis lazuli associated with the sky with its beautiful deep blue. This is labradorite associated with stormy skies. And you might be able to see that it flashes, its colour flashes on the surface. Tied on with turquoise blue silk. This is a very deep amber citrine. And then a sky blue topaz set in recycled 22-karat gold. It would be fair to say that I try to take a less traditional approach if I can. So hence these brooches, which I call enshrined. They are complete crystals of imperial topaz and aquamarine, and they are gently held in the forms that echo their own forms, and then tied very securely with silk to add another pop of colour. And they're called enshrined because there was just something quite iconic and obviously niche-like and something very precious about them when I made them, so hence the name. I like having my hands on the metal. I enjoy problem solving to do with techniques that I might be unfamiliar with. So for me, it is all about the making and constructing and the placement and the balance of a piece. And yes, I do enjoy the fact that it's handmade. When I'm not making jewellery or objects, I knit to relax in the evening. I'm just one of those people that needs to have my hands on the go. So.